Cine-Pickers, and welcome to Cine-Picks. I'm Kevin, and on my right is Michaele. And so this is a show where each of us takes turns picking a movie that the other person has not seen yet. And this week, Michaele picked the movie. So Michaele, what was your Cine-Pick for this week?
My Cine-Pick is a very personal Cine-Pick for you, Kevin. It was the 2018 movie The Nun.
The Nun, yes.
The Nun. So, Kevin, before we delve into some facts about The Nun, I'm predicting there's going to be nun puns in here. Just a quick disclaimer.
All right.
How nunny. Anyway, what is your summary of the movie The Nun?
Alright. So, The Nun takes place. It's a prequel to The Conjuring, and 20 years before all of the Warren's adventures. And it takes place in an abbey in Romania that has a portal to hell in it. And why is the portal to hell? I was like, what's going on the whole time? So anyways, there's a portal to hell. But for some reason, nobody else knows about it. And a nun commits suicide. And it's this whole scandal in the church. And so the Vatican sends a priest and a nun to the church in Romania, or to the abbey in Romania, to find out if the abbey is still a holy place or not. And of course, we find out that it is not. And then literally all hell breaks loose, and it's there you go.
Yes, I love that this movie decided to take it just the extra step from your normal haunting movie, and they were like, oh, so not only are we gonna throw in the titular nun, but we're gonna do this thing that we seem to be doing with all of the cinematic universe movies nowadays, where we just apparently it's not enough to just have the nun. Let's throw in a whole bunch of side characters, too, to make this interesting. And to make it seem as if all hell is literally breaking loose.
Right.
Yeah, Kevin, what are some of your initial thoughts on The Nun?
Okay, so, first off, I like to say this is the first Conjuring movie I've ever seen. I have not seen any other Conjuring films before. And I've been familiar with, the Warren adventures, just kind of, here and there, and also there was a Doctor Who episode that featured the Warrens, and that was very interesting. I don't remember what happened in that episode, but it was interesting. A haunted house Doctor Who episode is always fun. But so when I watched The Nun, I wasn't sure what to expect because I hadn't seen any of the other Conjuring movies. I expected a lot of jump scares, a lot of wah type of music, and there was some of that, so it did not disappoint.
I mean, I can provide a little bit more background context on why, on what this movie is basically sequeling here.
Yeah.
And so it's not actually a sequel to the direct Conjuring. There's actually two Conjuring movies. The Conjuring 1 has nothing to do with The Nun.
Right.
The second Conjuring has to do with the fact that this nun, heavy spoiler alert by the way, it has to do with the fact it's a normal kind of haunted house movie that takes place in England, but we find out that all of the events in the movie and all of the hauntings on Ed and Lorraine Warren's side are kind of being caused by this nun that has been following Lorraine around since childhood, basically. It's kind of it's preying on her Catholicism and on her faith, and is a demon that's basically just stuck with her her entire life. And then the demon ends up being the catalyst for all of the hauntings in that house. And there's a whole thing, and then they defeat the demon by calling out its name, and special effects, yay!
Yeah.
So that's basically all that you really need to know before going in to watch The Nun. And The Nun was supposed to be the prequel to where we find out about the origins of the nun. But what I think is hilarious about this movie is that it really doesn't give us the origins of the nun. It's like that's explained in like a 5-minute movie scene as to the origins of the nun. What we get instead is like what the nun was doing 20, 30 years prior, but we don't get any answers as to how did the nun get out of the abbey? Like, how did the nun suddenly end up in England and attach itself to Lorraine and Ed Warren?
Right.
That's the one thing, and that's the one thing I was hoping to get out of this movie. I'm like, I want to know what the connection is. We never figure that out.
No. Really? And also, like, knowing that part, it makes less sense, because in the movie you find out that the nun is this demon, but the reason why it takes the form of a nun is to blend in with its surroundings, and it's in an abbey, and so it's able to roam more freely around the abbey because it's disguised as a nun. So then why is it that if this thing can pick any form, it basically chooses its form, why does it stay as the nun in The Conjuring 2?
That's true. And I think it's because, and again, we don't get an explanation. I have the theory for it, but like, I think it's because in another life, Lorraine Warren was maybe like a former nun or something, or like has some kind of Catholic roots. And that's why it's presenting itself to her still as a nun.
Yeah.
Because it just wants to freak her out. But you're right, though. It doesn't really make sense. Because if it can take the form of anything and adapt to its surroundings to manipulate people, then it could have done that easily in The Conjuring 2. But we found out that its original form at the end of the movie is still a nun. So, it's interesting. I do have a theory, though. I don't know if you noticed, there's an end scene at the end of the movie where we find out the connection, sort of, on how it got to the United States, and the fact that it possessed the French guy, Frenchie. It possessed, also, is his name Frenchie?
Yeah.
I can't remember what.
I think it's Maurice is his real name, but Frenchie is, everybody calls him Frenchie, and in the credits it's Frenchie, so we can just call him Frenchie. But
is that racist?
It's a derogatory term for French Canadians. That's what I've heard, but I don't know. But his character is named Frenchie, but I believe his real name is...
His real name is like Maurice.
It's Maurice, I think. Yeah.
Right? Like, we find out at the end of the film that the nun is actually possessed Maurice, and then Maurice somehow ended up, I don't know, in the presence of Ed and Lorraine Warren, where they performed an exorcism on him. And so the woman you see at the end is the woman playing Lorraine Warren. That woman, her name is Vera Farmiga. She plays Lorraine Warren in every single one of these cinematic movies. But, fun fact, she's the real-life sister of the actual actress.
Yeah,
the girl in the movie.
Yeah, I read that. So after watching it the first time, I was looking at the IMDb and everything, and then I realized that they are sisters in real life. And then, when I rewatched The Nun, all of a sudden I couldn't unsee it. They look so similar that I could not unsee the similarities, and I felt like that was a little distracting for the second time viewing. But
it would make sense. See, it makes sense if they made like another movie where they connect the two.
Yeah.
My thought was, what if Lorraine Warren was actually her? Like, what if Lorraine Warren was that postulate?
Right.
That was like growing up in Italy,
yeah,
where she was like doing her novitiate duties, but like also would that make sense like timeline wise? Maybe,
but I think would have been a perfect
nun.
Yeah, well, what would have been a perfect opportunity to make that connection would be in The Nun, but they didn't. So that's the thing that bugs me, is like, why wouldn't they make that connection, or makes any sort of connection between the Warrens, and other than the fact that the Warrens have some sort of knowledge about this event or people related to the event, but the event itself is not related to the Warrens at all. And I was like,
it's not.
Yeah, so Because I haven't seen any of the Conjuring movies, but I'm sure that if I had seen the Conjuring movies, it probably would have bugged me even more. And now, knowing what you have told me so far, yeah, it kind of bugs me still.
Oh, yeah. They don't provide us with any answers. And I think that's open-ended for a reason. Because, from what I wrote down, due to the success of The Nun and the fact that it made, let's see, it was produced on a $22 million budget, and it earned $365.6 million. So it way outperformed its budget. Due to that success, they are planning on making a sequel to The Nun. So part of me is like, okay, this could either be bad, or this could give us more answers, because I want more answers. Like, my theory was, what if Lorraine Warren is the young postulate nun, and she somehow decided to not become a nun, and instead became an investigator? But see, that doesn't make sense either, because at the end of the film, the woman whose name I can't remember, she's the sister, the postulate, she takes her vows to become a nun.
Yeah.
And it's like, once you take your vows, I don't know if it's that easy to just leave.
Yeah.
And then become a paranormal investigator.
Right.
So, like, it would make sense. It would be cool, I think, if the nun at the end of the movie was like, you know what? I have a gift. I see things. I hear things. This has been happening. You know, Mary lights, what is it? Mary lights the way. That's been guiding me my entire life. I'm going to go into expelling demons from people and into the exorcism and paranormal field, and I'm going to become a paranormal investigator. And then what do you know? Now it's the origin story of Lorraine Warren.
Yeah. Well, that would have been perfect, except for the fact that she felt so seriously about her gift that she decided to take her vows at the end of the movie. That was the motivation at the end of the movie to take her vows. It's like, oh, I see that this is a serious gift, and that, you know, that in order to fully use it, then I need to take my vows. But then all of a sudden she's like, never mind. It's fine. I could use my gift elsewhere. Like, it's a useful gift, but, you know, because she's, you know, it's... So that's the thing, is like, I feel like this movie does not connect very well to the rest of the series. And I haven't even seen the rest of the series, and I already know, like, there's no connection. It's... Also, so... Alright, so here's one thing with this movie, is that it was the first movie at the time that was not connected to any of the other Conjuring, or that isn't based on true events, or it's based on recorded events. The other Conjuring 2, Conjuring 2, and Annabelle, I believe, are all based off of real events or recorded events, or, you know, whatever. But The Nun is the first fully fictional movie. It's not based on real people. It's not based on real events. And so it's the first movie in the series to be completely fictional. But that means they could do anything they want, including tying it to the original films, which they didn't. Right. So
and instead, they decided to make the demon this all-powerful demon that defies time, space, the laws of physics, and all rules and parameters set within that. Which, you know, from our last review, we know that I'm very, very, I'm a little obsessive about the rules and regulations inside horror movies.
Right.
And whether or not the films follow them.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you gotta have a set of rules that you can follow. And once you know the rules, you can break them. You can be creative as heck as you want to. But, yeah, this movie is, I have no idea how anyone is still alive.
Yeah. Well, so one of the issues I got with this movie is it's similar to Love on the Leash in the way where characters do things because the script told them to do things. And, like, things happen because that's the way it was written, but it doesn't actually follow any real logic. And I've got a whole list of things. I called this list unnatural behaviors. I've got a whole list of things called unnatural behaviors. Just dumb things that the characters do that just really bug me. And, like, normal people don't do that. And so like the first one, when Frenchie was following the nun, so Frenchie was leaving the abbey, he's gonna go back into town, and then he sees a nun walking in the forest. So Frenchie decides he's going to follow the nun, and then it causes all the, he runs into like some evil nun, the one that hung herself, who's got now her face is all decayed or whatever, and like rah.
Yeah.
So, but none of that would have happened if Frenchie just focused on his goal of getting out, because that's the thing. So the reason I call this unnatural behaviors is these unnatural behaviors, as I call them, happen every single time a character has a specific goal, and it has just like it's super focused, or at least should be super focused on their specific goals. So for instance, this one, Frenchie needs to get out of the forest and back into town. He's already established that he hates this place. It's a super creepy place. He gets really bad vibes from it, and he doesn't want to stay any longer than he has to. Now it's nighttime, and he has to walk back to his horse, through this, super spooky woods, and then
the horse is still there.
Right.
You also have to wonder about that. It's like, how did he get back into town?
Yeah, well, his horse.
Still be there.
Obviously, his horse is. Either that, or he just had to walk the whole way. But anyways, so he has to like get back to his horse so he can like hightail it back to town, and then he sees a nun outside of an abbey, and he's like, excuse me, hey, wait, what are you? It's like as if he knows why would a nun be out, or what, like all of a sudden he's concerned that a nun is outside, and and so he decides to like follow this nun. Of course, the nun disappears, and then he gets chased by demons. But it's like you would never chase by demons if you just focus on your goal of getting out. Any normal person would be like, a nun, whatever. We're in an abbey. There's gonna be nuns.
We're in an abbey.
Who cares? The characters need to be put in certain situations in order to achieve certain goals for the filmmakers, such as scares, or they need to be separated so that way they have to face some sort of challenge, And there's a lot of times where these characters get separated, and then they have to face these certain challenges on their own, and it adds drama and suspense and blah blah, everything that makes a movie exciting. So you need to be able to do these things, But the way they chose to separate these characters or get them in these weird situations where they have a problem they need to solve, I just feel like are super lazy. For instance, as I was talking before, like Frenchie, he needs to find himself face to face with a demon nun. Not the demon nun, but with a demon nun, and like that needs to happen because we need to get the scares in. There hasn't been a scare in a while, so we need to get that scare in, and it's just we need to make this scene more exciting. And so to do that, we have this unnatural behavior where all of a sudden Frenchie is distracted by this nun walking alone in the woods, and he decides to follow her, even though like that has nothing to do with what he had to do in the scene. And so, why did he follow the nun? Because the script said follow the nun. There wasn't any real motivation behind it, and so it felt very unnatural. Yeah, it's very unnatural, and it's very lazy writing. It got you to a really good scare where like the nun is hanging in front of him and then falls on him and then screaming in his face, and it's very exciting. It's a very cool scene, but to get to that scene was just it was very unnatural.
Into the back of your head.
Yeah.
You know that this character did not need to make a stupid decision, but it was written in the script.
Yeah.
The character makes a decision that is out of character.
Yeah,
so that we can get the jump scare.
And I have a lot of this, and most of it is character follows blah blah blah, And so like another one is right before the big climax, they have a goal. They have the blood of Christ. We need to go to the portal and close the portal. That's the goal, right? And we need to do it fast because this place is freaky deaky. We got to get out of here, and so we can't leave until we close the portal. So one priority, super important, close that portal. And so Frenchie and Irene are going, and they're gonna go close that portal. But Frenchie hears a sound, a door creaking in a haunted house, and Frenchie's like, without telling Irene, decides he's going to follow it. Now characters are separated. So the goal was separate these characters because Irene has some challenges she needs to face, and then also Frenchie needs to do whatever, But we need to separate these characters. How do we do it? Frenchie heard a sound, and he's going to follow that sound. Don't worry about closing the portal. We gotta hear who opened the door. As I was saying, super unnatural behaviors. It's just really stupid. And and then also Irene sees she sees the candle. So she walks into this dark room, and then in her peripheral vision, a candle ignites. A candle. And then she's like, oh, a candle.
I must go investigate.
What is that? I'm going to go look at the candle. And she walks to the candle, and she finds herself right in the middle of a pentagram. And now she's like, oh no, I made a huge mistake. So the goals of the filmmaker is Irene needs to be in this pentagram, right? That in order to get to the next thing where she gets possessed and everything, she needs to be in this pentagram. How did she get there? She sees a candle, and she has to go look at it. Yeah, and it's no, you gotta go. Put the blood of Christ on the portal. It's in the next room over. It's not. It's get over there. But
Can I also make note too of another unnatural thing? And I wrote it down here. Yeah. In my opinion, I think this is the funniest part of the movie because I laughed. Even when I saw this the first time, I could not stop laughing about it. The fact that scene where Frenchie is stuck in the graveyard and he gets attacked by a nun.
Yeah.
Not the nun.
Right.
Or not even the first nun. I'm not entirely sure which nun.
I think it was the first.
Which person at this point?
I think it was the nun that hung herself, but yeah.
Okay, yeah. Again, it's confusing because sometimes she's in her mummified form and sometimes she's not. So it's kind of confusing as to which nun is which. But Frenchie, he leaves after going through this crazy traumatic thing where he's attacked by an undead nun. He up and grabs one of the crosses from the outside of the Abbey of St. Carta. He takes it off of the premises and carries it with him as a self-defense. It's dude, do you realize that cross is probably cursed in and of itself? 2, you just took away that one of the defense mechanisms that was keeping the evil inside. And then 3, you proceed to take that cross with you into town where you go to a bar and just have a drink with the cross just sitting there.
Yeah.
And everyone's looking at you, spitting on you dude.
Yeah.
What are you doing? Why are you here? It's again, those are things that I get why they're done for comedic effect, but it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
It just doesn't.
Right. And there's some things with comedic there's some comedic effects or comedic reliefs in this movie that I feel are kind of inappropriate. There's this movie. I feel it's more of a serious film. It's a serious horror movie. It takes itself very seriously, everything. And so a lot of the jokes that Frenchie tells or Frenchie makes, they feel very inappropriate, especially in the second part of the movie, or in the third act, where things are very serious. Everything is very goal oriented. We have to get this done, and there's demons attacking them all the time. And Frenchie makes some jokes. One joke, I actually groaned when Frenchie made it. It was because before Frenchie comes to the rescue, surprisingly, and helps Father Burke defeat some demon and so Father Burke is next time use the gun, and Frenchie's I was saving it for emergencies, whatever, okay. And then the next time they get attacked, Frenchie finally pulls out the gun and uses it, and then says, but by this point everything's super serious in the film, and Frenchie's that felt like an emergency, and I was ugh, really, I was this is not the place for this kind of a joke.
I wrote, and I quote, this is what he says. He cocks his gun. He says, "Time for prayer comes later. Now's the time for action."
Yeah.
And I'm just why?
Yeah.
Why is this in the movie at this particular time? It really does yank you out of the mood. It does yank you out of the mood of the scene. It's supposed to relieve you
Mm-hmm.
with comedic
Yeah.
effect, but it doesn't.
Yeah. Well, it kind of like, because I feel like it should be. I feel like it should be more serious, but the characters aren't taking it seriously. And the fact that the characters aren't taking it seriously, like, makes me not want to take it as seriously as either. And so now it's not... There isn't as much drama. There's not as much suspense. It takes the suspense away. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe the situation isn't as bad as we thought it was, because obviously the characters don't think it's that bad. And so
Her sister, I have to say, I think Sister Irene,
Mm-hmm.
I think Thaisa Farmiga did a really good job playing her.
Yeah.
Because she was sympathetic, but also her set of experiences are completely different than the other characters in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Purely because she has access as a novitiate to the rest of the church, and she has powers
Right.
that aren't that very clearly explained.
Yeah, they're vague, but they're believable at the same time. They're not ridiculous. Like, she doesn't have, like, telekinesis or anything like that. It's very, very slight. And I like how they used it, especially when Father Burke finds himself buried in a grave, and she has to find the grave. I like how they didn't go into a lot of detail of how she knew which grave it was. She just kind of stopped and just closed her eyes and just, like, thought about it. You didn't have, like, this whole, like, what is she seeing? This whole vision of you, like, zooming around and then, like, going underground and, like, oh, I see Father Burke. She just kind of, it was very subtle. Like, it's very believable, the way that they portrayed her visions. They didn't show her visions a lot. She explained her visions more, because I feel like that's how it would be in real life. A lot of, especially like when you have visions, they're not specific. I feel like, there's, maybe you see glimpses of something, or maybe, but it's a puzzle that you have to put together. And
maybe it's like a feeling.
Yeah, it's like a feeling. Yeah.
It's like an intuition.
Yeah. And so
It's hard to portray it on film.
Yeah, and I think they did a really good job of not trying to portray it on film. It's just having her just, like, close her eyes and just, okay, like, try to tune everything out and just kind of figure out what's going on. And so I feel like that was very well done. And there, that was more believable. And I could buy that, like, she does have this extra ability, but it's not like a ridiculous ability, and that, like, it's almost like a skill that she's been able to high tune. It's not like she was able to, like, yeah. Or I'm trying to figure out how to describe it.
She just showed up and magically was like, I know everything about my power.
Yeah.
I am a completely unbeatable person. I'm the only one that can defeat this demon, and nobody else can.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like it was organic. Like, like she had like a power that was super specific to her, but it evolved and it changed along with her.
Yeah. Exactly.
As she developed throughout the movie, and I appreciated that. So I 100% agree with you on that front. Like, normally I'm very much about, like, why do you need to spill exposition to us when you could just show us?
Yeah.
But I feel like in this case it may be the opposite. Like, I think maybe if they showed us, it would have been too much.
Yeah.
It would have just been too much.
In a lot of movies, it seems like there needs to be, there's like an A story and B story. And so definitely the A story is the nun and this whole abbey and the whole situation that everything's going on there. And then the B story is, I feel like, is Father Burke's backstory with his failed exorcism. Yeah. And so I feel like the boy was a way to make Father Burke's scenes and also his situation seem more interesting. Because other than that, he doesn't do a lot in the film. Leading up to it. He adds a lot of exposition.
Yeah.
As far as defeating the nun, he's not really there. That's mostly Irene and Frenchie are the ones that defeat the nun. Father Burke, he's dealing with a snake bite while they're fighting the nun.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think he functions as the historian of the straight man kind of historian character. Like, you see that a lot in like like horror themed TV shows that I watch all the time.
Yeah.
But like Dead Files is a lot like that, where like they have the main girl who goes around the houses and she communicates with the spirits. But then you have the other man who is strictly he's a retired cop and an investigator, and he's the one who does all the backstories on the cases. And I feel like that in that case, that's what Father Burke is here. He's the straight man character. But if you think about it, I think they could have added more depth to his character if they gave him a little more charisma. Like, they could have combined Frenchie and Father Burke into one person, and that would have made us care a lot more about him when he was attacked by this random exercised boy. That didn't go well. Because I don't know, like, I know, maybe, are you saying, like, you might be saying that it added more depth to Father Burke, but I think, to me, it just felt contrived.
Yeah.
Like,
I feel like it's something, I feel like it's something that they needed to do in order to make it more interesting, which kind of tells me that Father Burke's character just isn't that interesting. If you need to, like, constantly be jamming this demon kid into the story just to make this character more interesting, you know, it's...
Right.
So,
and I didn't think the demon kid was scary.
No.
I think just the ominous presence of a nun just looking at you. That Abbess character... Okay, can I just say, one thing, there are a few things that I think this film does really well, and one of those things is sound design. You'll notice that, Kevin, I know that this is like your first in the Conjuring series, but like, it's one of the things that the Conjuring does really, really well, is they get rid of all that background noise, where it's like, it's just, they give you the silence so well, and when a character talks, especially in a demonic voice, it feels so up front. Like it's full surrounding you. And that honestly is one of the most terrifying things I think about these movies, is that the sound design I think is really good. Like that Abbess just laughing at the end, like like, oh, it gave me chills. And you get other, like Conjuring 2 had that moment too, where one of the girls speaks in the older man demon's voice, and it sends shivers up your spine. It's like an exorcist moment.
Yeah, exactly. When you watch a movie, a lot of questions will be brought up at the beginning, and then throughout the movie, those questions will be answered. You know, and I kept track of the questions as I was watching the movie, like writing down questions that I had. And then I kind of check them off as they get answered in school. One thing, there's a couple questions that did not get answered that really bugged me. One was, why didn't the Vatican know about this? Like the kind of the history of this abbey, because Father Burke tried to tell him, like, oh, well, you're keeping a secret from me, and the Vatican was like, actually, we're not keeping a secret from you. This is actually one of the times we're not keeping a secret from you. We actually just don't know. You know, but it's like, so why don't they know? Because as you find out about the backstory of the abbey, you find out that this is a very intense history in this abbey. You know, with the Duke who owned it before, who opened the portal to hell, and then the Crusades came in and they closed the portal to hell using the blood of Christ. I think you would have a very careful record of every time the blood of Christ was ever used, right?
Right.
And so why don't you know about this one incident where they used the blood of Christ to close this thing?
Even when World War II was in its full force, and there were bombings that happened in that abbey, you think that destruction of property would also be something that was reported to the Vatican.
Right, yeah.
I know, just on a proper level. I don't know, like, personally, I think the whole backstory on the Abbey itself is really fascinating. I would have loved that to be a prequel.
Yeah, that would be
like,
cool.
The whole thing about the Duke and the Crusades coming in, like, that sounds really cool.
Yeah.
Why the Vatican doesn't know about it, I don't know. And I have a creeping suspicion. I mean, like, I don't know how closely the nuns in that abbey operated under Vatican jurisdiction, but, like, I know nuns today are traditionally, like they're a lot more progressive as a as a group of females that is essentially in charge of running their own establishment.
Yeah.
They kind of act. They're acting of their own accord. So it's entirely possible that all the people in that abbey were like, okay, we are a giant covenant of women, and we're responsible now for keeping this evil at bay. If we report this to the Vatican at this time, there's no way they're gonna believe us. We've got other things to attune to. But I do think that is interesting. Like, why were things not communicated even in the slightest?
Yeah.
Because the other nuns, they could have explained that too in the scene where they're talking to Irene. Like this church, this abbey has a very sordid history. We tried to report it to the Vatican, but they refused to believe us, or whatever. Or like there's a big conspiracy and they don't know. Again, like so many opportunities.
Yeah. Right? But it's like, so why doesn't the Vatican know? So before I was telling you, there was like the unnatural behaviors. That is sloppy writing. It's very lazy writing. Because you need these certain scenes. You need the scene, like Irene needs to be possessed. You know, the characters need to get separated. They need to be in these certain situations. Like, those are, like, story-wise, those are very important story elements in order to, like, tell the story and make it exciting and dramatic and everything. But the way they got into the situations was very lazy. I think they could have gotten into the same situations and in a different way that would have been more believable and also just better thought out. And so those are very lazy. The fact that there are these questions, like why didn't the Vatican know about these things? Why didn't the nuns try to use the blood of Christ right away when they knew that the portal had a crack in it or whatever from the bombings? Why didn't they do, all these other questions? Like, that is... I feel like that's just bad writing.
They didn't know the blood of Christ was down there, did they?
That's another question. Why was it there? Like, unless they... Because they did have it. At the very beginning of the movie, that's what they were going to do. There were only 2 nuns left at the very end of the movie. Or no, at the very beginning of the movie. There were only 2 nuns left, and they're like, we have to use this. They didn't say it was the blood of Christ, but they showed the relic itself. Yeah.
I thought it was a key. I thought it was like some kind of a key.
They did. They had a key. The key was to unlock the blood of Christ. The lock. So the So the safe. Yeah.
So they knew that it existed.
So the safe. So that's what the key was. Yeah, that's the thing. I had to rewatch it, and I figured all this stuff the second time rewatching it, and I was like, oh, I get it. So the key unlocks the safe that holds the blood of Christ. That's why the key was so important. But they also had the blood of Christ in their hand, right? And that's why at the beginning of the movie, those 2 nuns go down there to. They're going to close the portal. That's the whole thing. But why did they wait?
One of them just goes in by herself.
Yeah, that goes in by herself and then gets, destroyed. But, so my question is, like, so why didn't they do that earlier? Why did they wait until there were only 2 nuns left? All of the other nuns had been killed. And so, like, why is there only 2 nuns left, before they decide we're going to do, Because obviously, because they explained that after they closed the portal originally, when the Crusades came in and they closed the portal and they turned it into an abbey, they still needed to pray constantly in order to keep the evil at bay. And so throughout, the hundreds of years that this abbey's been in operations, somebody has always been praying at one point in time, constantly, 24/7. Somebody has been praying. Just to keep the evil at bay after they closed the portal. Then during the war, the portal got cracked, and now the evil is starting to leak out. So prayer is not enough at that point, right? And so I think as soon as they find out, or they realize, okay, well, something is up, they should have just fixed the problem right away,
right?
Instead of just.
Do you think that the second that the portal cracked due to those bombings, they should have been down there with that blood of Christ to close that thing back up? Yeah. Also, bombing opens the portal.
Right? Yeah. That's so. That's kind of weird. I don't know what that's all about.
That don't make sense in this movie. There's a lot consequences, I feel, are another thing in this film that aren't correctly dealt with. Like the fact to the roles, again, the roles and logistics. The fact that the nun in the very beginning of the film, which, by the way, I thought that was a great opening sequence to that movie. Like, I was hooked from that first sequence. When you watch it on YouTube by itself, it's great.
Yeah.
But then it's connected to the rest of the movie. I'm like, why? Yeah, that first nun that dies, that has to commit suicide, so that her body isn't overtaken by and possessed and used as a vessel to do evil. Like, but she still gets possessed anyway.
Yeah, well, her soul doesn't get taken. I think that was the thing. She needed to protect her soul. Somehow, but yeah, so that I don't think that was explained very well, because it feel like the nun just needs a vessel.
She's possessed regardless.
Yeah, like the nun just needs a vessel, but apparently the soul is also very important as well. And it has to be the soul of a nun. And that's not explained why either. Like, I don't think that was explained very well.
If it has to be the soul of a nun, they shouldn't have sent a nun over.
But the Vatican doesn't know anything. That's the thing. The Vatican doesn't know anything, apparently. Or maybe they do and they just screwed everybody over. But
that sucks. Maybe they were like, okay, Sister Irene is a problem. We have to get rid of her.
Right.
Send her over here as a sacrifice.
Is she like Maria? It's like The Sound of Music, like the horror version of The Sound of Music. How do you solve a problem like Irene? You know?
How do you solve a problem like Tyson? I mean, she was wearing some hairstyles in the very beginning of the movie.
Right.
And some outfits that were very Sound of Music. I've definitely was getting the vibe. But yeah, the consequences, it's just hilarious. And then even in the very end, even after they spit the blood of Christ on Valak the Defiler, that demon still doesn't go away.
Yeah.
So not even the blood of Christ can stop this demon. So you're right. Then what was the point of prayer? What was the point of even closing? Like, what was the point of even doing any of that if the demon is still out there? And then in The Conjuring 2, they fix that problem, and it turns out the only thing that is needed to banish the demon is just knowing his name.
Okay.
Like, that's something. Okay. Oh yeah, because you haven't seen this.
Yeah.
I'm spoiling it for you. That is how Lorraine Warren banishes the demon. She's able to like look up his name in a demonology test, and she's like, I know your name. It's Valak, and then like Valak goes, whoa, and she like, you know, like disintegrates and explodes into a million flames and whatever.
Yeah.
And that's how he goes away. Which means that like the entire, if you know that, then that means the entirety of the nun is just not even the blood of Jesus Christ himself is going to stop this nun from escaping the abbey. It's hilarious to me. It's hysterical. Also, there's Easter eggs in this movie as well. If you look around the movie, you see it on Father Burke's crossword puzzle, and you see it on license plates, but they leave little Easter eggs that say Valak written strategically in certain places.
Okay.
Which it's like, okay, if Father Burke, which is also funny because it's like Father Burke is the one doing the crossword puzzle, which means he wrote Valak, which means he knows who the demon's name is. Why didn't they call out the demon's name when they were down there trying to throw the blood of Jesus Christ on him?
Right.
There's just so many,
Yeah, and so like that's I feel like that's bad writing. So like there's lazy writing in this movie, but there's also some bad writing story-wise where like this doesn't make sense, and that that really bugs me. I feel like it bothered me more the second time. So on Rotten Tomatoes, this movie has like I think 25% score. So as you said before, this movie made a ton of money. It was the highest grossing film in the Conjuring series, but it was the lowest rated film in the Conjuring series as well. And so that's that.
And, if
and I think it kind
of the way that this was made too. They had extensive reshoots. The dates for this film were pushed back constantly. The guy who directed this film, it was only his second film.
Yeah.
And the writer for this film, as much as I love James Wan, this was his creation, the co-writer, like, he's done a whole bunch of other stuff in the Conjuring universe, which worked. Like, he did It, and he did It 2.
Yeah.
And he did Annabelle Creation, which I thought was really good. But also then he did the original Annabelle. And he did, like, so he's a mixed bag in and of itself. It's just kind of amazing how the concept, it could have been so good. It could have been so good, but I feel like because it might have been passed through so many different hands, it just it missed the mark because it logically just doesn't make sense. And I never thought I'd be saying the word logic in a demon movie.
Another thing is the demon's motivations, the nun's motivations. Like, obviously, it's very clear at the end. You find out, like, oh, she needs to take on another vessel so she can, reach her full potential of being a demon, whatever. And that's very clear at the end. And her motivations, her actions, everything she does at the end of the movie is very clear. Like, okay, well, we know the goals. This is what's going to happen. At the beginning, though, it seems like she's just trying to scare everybody.
Yeah. Why does she keep messing with people? If she's an all-powerful demon, she could very easily just kill them.
Like, I feel like that was just a horror movie trope, like a haunted house trope, where a lot of times the ghosts just want you out of the house, and so they'll just scare you just to get you out of there, and that's their motivation. They don't want you in the house, and so the movie's like, you have to get rid of the ghost so that way you can stay in the house, and the ghost has got to get out. This one is different though, where at the beginning it seemed like she just wanted them out. She's just trying to scare them and just trying to get them out. Especially like that scene.
Even off the premises.
Yeah, especially like
they get followed into the graveyard.
Father Burke, he has to deal with the demon kid for that first time and everything. Like, super freaky deaky. He gets buried alive and everything. It seems like the nun is just trying to get rid of them. And then especially before that, also or I guess it's simultaneously, while Father Burke is dealing with the demon kid in the cemetery, Irene is, wandering around the abbey as well, and then sees, has her first encounter with the nun, with the mirror, and there's like that good jump scare, like, very scary jump scare or whatever, but the nun does nothing with Irene, and just scares her, and it seems like, oh, well, the nun's motivation is just to scare people. She scared Father Burke, she scared Irene, and she's trying to just get rid of them. She's like, get out of my abbey, this is my place, get out. But that's not her motivation at all. And you would think like, oh, well, maybe she's trying to motivate them to go to the portal or wherever, so that way she can possess Irene. But that didn't seem to be the case at the very, very beginning when she was trying to get the other nun who committed suicide. And so she was going to go to that nun's room to grab her and bring her back. And so obviously she can just grab you and take you back to the pentagram that she painted on the ground or whatever.
Yeah,
like,
why are you
she does
down this hallway so slowly?
Yeah.
To be scary.
But even then, like, she doesn't need, because it seems like, oh, well, maybe she's not powerful enough to like get you there, and so she needs to motivate you to get down there, and so she's doing all of this scare stuff to trick the characters into going deeper into the castle or into the abbey, like, and so that's what it seemed like. But
I thought she was just trying to weaken their will.
That might also be as well, but I think it seemed like because she tricked Irene into walking into the pentagram. Right?
Yeah.
And so it seemed like she's just trying to trick them. She's trying to separate them. She's trying to do these things, She's trying to manipulate these characters into doing what she wants them to do so that way she can, because she's not actually powerful enough to physically do it herself. But once we get to the end of the movie, you realize at the beginning of the movie, she's plenty powerful to do whatever she wants. She can grab a nun and just take her back. And do whatever, And that's what she was planning on doing to that first nun before she committed suicide. And so she could easily do the same thing to Irene as well. It's not a big deal. But for some reason she doesn't. She's just doing all this, jump scares and like other things to like trick them into looking further into the castle.
That she has the ability to be in more than one place at a time.
Yeah.
And I have to and I think that is what amps up that whole invincibility aspect of the nun being this like invincible, all-powerful like being. And I have to say, having seen all the movies in the Conjuring universe now, that is a recurring theme with virtually all of them, and it's one of the loopholes that the directors have not closed up yet. Like all the demons, and it's all of the ones, and it's all the movies that by the way have not gotten good critical scores. But like the second Annabelle creation also had that same issue where we set up certain rules for the doll because the spirit is in the doll and it needs to inhabit a person to get out of the doll. But like all of a sudden the demon in the doll is making other things happen around it, which doesn't make sense. If it's confined to the doll, how is it influencing other things? How can it magically be in 50 different places at a time, influencing like this girl to fall down the stairs over here, and then it's scaring this girl in the well over here?
Yeah.
So it just like the rules are just kind of weird, and that's a thing. That's like a recurring thing in all of the Conjuring movies. That all the demons just really want your soul, and then they also can somehow pop up in multiple places at the same time, which is like it's great for entertainment, but it doesn't make sense.
I feel like it causes a lot of issues where the rules are a little blurry, but also the motivations. And so like I don't know what this thing wants, and that's okay. Like as a first viewer, when you watch it the first time, you shouldn't know exactly what the characters really want, or especially like the villains, like especially like a monster or whatever. You don't know what it wants, and then that's kind of the mystery. So you spend the whole hour and a half figuring it out and then stopping it. Like, okay, well, before we can stop it, we have to find out what does it want. And so they do that in this movie. But then when you watch it the second time, you realize if this demon wanted this the whole time, why is she doing all kinds of other stuff? Why is she like spooking everybody else? Why doesn't she just kill Father Burke? Straight up just murder him and then take Irene. Like why is she letting him go and like read all these books and everything? Like
she could have killed, and she also could have killed Frenchie the second that he stepped on that property. As well. The second that he got close to the corpse of the nun who was hanging, like she could have found a way to lure him in. She could have opened the doors. These are things that you should have been able to figure out. Like as you're reading the script, you should have been able to notice these things. And like, wait a minute. That's the thing that just bugs me about mostly movies. Like, so people have been writing stories for thousands of years, right? I feel like it's a very well-established art form, telling a story, and especially movies in general. Like people have been making movies for at least 100 years. It's a very well-established art form. Why is it that today in 2020 people are still making bad movies with bad stories? Like there are time and money.
But you should be able to just tell a good story. Like there are formulas to telling a good story, and just because the story is formulaic doesn't mean that it's repetitive or anything. You need good motivations that make sense. So when the character does something, it has to make sense. The reason why they do it. It's not that hard, and that there's a variety of things. And so you add that into the formula. The story needs to make sense altogether. You can ask a lot of questions throughout the entire story, but at the end of the story, all of the questions need to be answered. If you're still asking questions, then it's a bad story, right? Unless you're purposely leaving it open for a sequel or whatever, then you can have other questions. So like cliffhangers and stuff like that. But these other questions of like, why did the demon try to chase everybody away at first when really the demon wanted everybody to stay? Like, that's a stupid question that I shouldn't have to ask, you know? Like, and so there are formulas to telling a good story. And it, you know, just because it's a formula doesn't mean that the story is repetitive or boring or blah, 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 you know. But just follow the formula, you know, and then you can tell a good story, and then you can get, you know, 80-90% on Rotten Tomatoes. This one did not tell a good story, and it showed in the ratings for sure. Like, it's
it definitely took advantage of utilizing the camp aspect. And also, I do want to praise their media team. I'm not sure, like, when this movie came out, there was a huge social media marketing push for this movie. And I remember because every time I would go onto YouTube, they had a jump scare advertisement where the nun's face would jump out at you, and you couldn't skip the ad. It was like an unskippable ad. And I think at some point YouTube sued the brothers for that, because they were like, this violates company policy and gives people heart attacks.
Yeah.
I'm like, that was a brilliant, like, really brilliant marketing ploy to get people to see the movie. But once you get people to see the movie, you have to, like, back up the claim that it's going to be good.
Yeah.
And at least, I mean, they did deliver on the jump scares. So, I mean, they weren't lying with their advertisements. I was hoping it would be a little bit more than that, because I feel like the elements are in place. At least aesthetically. You know, you've got good actors in these roles. You've got Bonnie Aarons returning to play the nun again, who, like, again, love Bonnie Aarons as an actress. She was in the Princess Diaries that came out. She was like I think she was like a duchess or something like that. I thought she was hilarious. I was like, great person to play this character. Like, everything was in place, and they had the budget. But man, that plot holes. It's distracting.
Yeah.
It was for me.
Yeah. Alright, so Michaela, if you were to rate this film, how would you rate this film?
This is always the hardest part.
Yeah.
If I could Cine-Pick this movie's rating, I think on the merit of, does this movie make sense? Is it good? It's like a 4 out of 10 for me.
Yeah.
But in terms of, like, a good flick for, like, entertainment, I think it served its purpose. Like, I think it served its entertainment purpose, and I would give it a 7 out of 10 for the entertainment purposes. But again, the fact that it takes itself seriously, and you can tell that they're trying to be all deep with, like, this is my faith. I'm reaffirming my faith. I'm going to literally toss the blood of Jesus Christ on your face to reaffirm my faith, and become a nun at the end. Like, again, ideas were set, like, they had good ideas, but they just couldn't flush them out.
Yeah, right.
And that's just where it fell flat. So what do you think, Kevin? What was your Cine-Picks?
Yeah, so I watched it twice. And the first time I watched it, I thought, it's an okay movie. I would say it's like a 6 out of 10. You know, it's an okay movie. I found it a little bit boring at some points, you know, but it was, you know, but it's okay. And then I watched it a second time, and the second time I watched it, I hated it. I almost couldn't finish it the second time. It was that bad. I just started noticing all these dumb things, because when I started taking notes, I did like half a page of notes. So, like, I've got my notes. I did, like, you know, this is like where my notes ended the first time I watched it, and then the second time I watched it, I took even, like, way more notes, and most of those notes are just questions and just dumb things characters are doing. The unnatural behaviors that I wrote on my notes, all of the unnatural behaviors, I wrote all of those in the second time watching it, when I noticed, like, these characters are just doing really dumb, random things, and I don't know why.
Unmotivated decisions.
Yeah, and so the second time I watched it, I just hated it. Also, every single possessed person or demon or anything evil, when it moves its head, its neck cracks. Every single one of them. I don't know if you noticed that, but it's literally every single demon or possessed person or everything. Their neck cracks every single time. And it got really, really annoying the second time I watched it. I noticed it the first time I watched it, and I was like, why are their necks cracking? I could not stand it, and so I almost didn't make it through the second viewing. So I'll give it a 2 out of 10 after the second viewing. I could not handle it.
Okay, Kevin, now that we've got the Cine-Pick ratings out of the way, what is your next Cine-Pick for me?
Alright, so my next Cine-Pick for you, we're gonna get away from the spooky stuff because now Halloween will be over next week, and we're gonna do something completely different. We're gonna go way back in time to 1935, and we're going to watch A Night at the Opera. Yeah. Ooh, yeah. So this is
ironic.
Yeah.
Like you just knew I was a musician.
Right. Yeah. Well, I wanted to pick a Marx Brothers movie because I love Marx Brothers, and so I wanted to pick one that I feel like you might enjoy as well, and so that's why we're gonna watch The Night at the Opera. Alright.
Well, I'm excited for this.
Yeah.
Yay! Alright, all you Cine-Pickers, thank you so much for watching. This has been Michaela and Kevin coming at you with The Nun. Make sure to like, comment, or hit subscribe to get more awesome content like this. And happy Cine-Picking!